I'm Heath Lambert, and you're listening to Marked by Grace, a podcast applying the grace of Jesus to all of life. Can a Christian purchase a firearm for protection? That's the question this week on Marked by Grace. I don't make them up. You do. If you don't like this question, if you want to raise another issue, or if you have a question about my answer to this question, then you can send it in to markedbygrace@fbcjax.com. That's markedbygrace@fbcjax.com. But this week, it's, should Christians purchase firearms? Are Christians allowed to get guns for personal protection? There's a lot going on with a question like this. There's a background of pacifism that I'm not going to talk about this week on the podcast. That's another topic for another day. One of the big realities behind it, though, is the reality of trusting God. And sometimes as Christians, we can place our trust in God at odds with action. So I'm supposed to trust the Lord for my life and for the protection of my family and loved ones. Does that preclude taking action? This is relevant for all sorts of things. You're supposed to trust the Lord with your personal finances, but the Bible commands saving and financial stewardship. And when you take that action, you're not distrusting the Lord. You're doing what the Lord tells you to do in another spot. We're supposed to trust the Lord with the health of our bodies and the number of our days. But the Bible also encourages stewardship of those bodies. And so one of the things we need to do before we even get to this question is just break down this tension that we create in our minds, that trusting God and our personal action are somehow at odds with one another. Of course, there are things that we could do to demonstrate a lack of trust and a lack of confidence in the Lord's care of our lives. But there's nothing at all that is inconsistent with doing what the Bible tells us to do and also trusting the Lord. So when we understand that, it actually really gets us a lot further down the road on answering the question, can a Christian purchase a firearm for protection? Should a Christian get a gun to protect themselves? Now listen, my goal on the podcast is not to speak about this in terms of what it means to be an American and the Second Amendment and all that. That's not my goal. My goal is to help us think biblically about this. And so what my burden is, and the question you've asked is, can Christians do this? And the way we would know if a Christian can do it is by what the Bible says. And so is there any indication in the Bible that this is a problem, that it's a problem for a Christian who trusts the Lord to get a gun, or that a Christian should get a gun to protect others? Well, I do think there is reason to believe that this is something that is not just acceptable, but even encouraged in the Bible. Now, Truth in Advertising, the Bible was inspired and completed well before the creation of firearms, so we won't be able to do a search in our concordance about guns or shotguns or pistols, but we can find information about weapons and about protecting other people. One verse that comes to mind is Exodus chapter 22, verse 36. And here, God is giving his law to his Old Testament people. And this is the God who the Israelite and who we are supposed to trust. And in that context, the God that wants us to trust him tells us this in Exodus chapter 22, verse 2. If a thief is found breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no blood guilt for him. All right, three things happening in this verse. There is a thief who is breaking into your house at night. That's the situation. Then there is a response. You, the homeowner, strike him. Again, we're not talking about guns here. Guns didn't exist yet. But the homeowner in Exodus chapter 22 picks up some kind of weapon and hits the person who is coming in. That is, they engage in an act of physical aggression, which is an act of physical protection, and he kills the intruder. So you got a thief breaking in, homeowner takes physical, aggressive action and kills the intruder. And then what happens? Well, verse 2 says, there shall be no blood guilt for him. What he says is the homeowner is not in trouble for defending his life, for defending his family, and even for defending his property. The person who's spoken of in moral categories is the intruder, called the thief, the person who's up to no good. But when you use force to put down that threat, the God who wants us to trust him says in Exodus chapter 22, verse 2, that you are not in trouble for that. So that's one passage about personal protection and the use of force. There's another passage, though, that I want you to think about, and it emphasizes our responsibility not just for ourselves and even for our family, and certainly not for our property. It emphasizes our protection of other people. In Psalm 82, verse 4, it says, rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. This creates a moral responsibility for righteous people who are looking at unrighteous behavior. There is a wicked party. There is a group of evil people or an evil person who is oppressing, harming, hurting, maybe even killing the weak and the needy. And the moral responsibility placed on righteous people is that we are supposed to deliver that person from the hand of the wicked. We're supposed to rescue them. Now listen, it does no good for a righteous person to have righteous sensibilities and to think righteously and to be able to accurately identify wickedness and oppression and do nothing to enforce wickedness and oppression. You got to take action, the psalmist says. And here's the thing, you better be sure that wicked people are going to be enforcing their wickedness with force. And so part of our demand to rescue the weak and the needy, to stand up to the wicked, is to be able to enforce our righteousness with force. So there are a couple of pieces of biblical evidence that point us in the direction that it is definitely not just acceptable, but even praiseworthy for Christians to use firearms for protection. Protecting yourself and your home and your family is not at odds with the teaching of Exodus chapter 22, verse 2. And the Bible encourages us in Psalm 82, verse 4, to rescue the weak and the needy from the hand of the oppressor. So for all those reasons, I think it is a good idea for righteous people to ensure that the unrighteous people aren't the only ones with weapons.